excited to be here with you. And I just wanted to have an opportunity to talk about my experience with going to the Thousand Goddess Gathering in 2008 at the Washington Monument Constitutional Garden. Mari Cornwell was the woman who received the vision for this, and she had been diagnosed with lymphoma, and she was told that if by a divine feminine voice in her ear, that if she followed her, if you follow my instructions, you will be cancer free. And so she was blown away by this instruction, and so she did, and she was cancer free. Her doctor to this day still can't believe that she doesn't have any evidence of lymphoma anymore. So very soon after that, she received a vision to host a Thousand Goddess Gathering in Washington, D.C. that was like right on the ley lines between the Washington Monument, the White House, the State Capitol building. They're all on these sacred geometry ley lines, and that she was to use her abilities with the other high conscious beings in sacred ritual to infuse more love and light into Washington, D.C., and to do it right before the elections in October. And so she began to call and gather people, and she found me on Facebook. We did not know each other, but when she found the work that I was doing around Mary Magdalene, that was when she heard the Divine Mother tell her to bring me out. So she flew me out and set me up to be able to do a sacred ceremony, and it was just wonderful, and such a humble being in service to the Divine Feminine, and I as well as devoting my life to it. So we were so happy and thrilled to come, and it inspired my whole team. Mari said that she wanted to have somebody who could know about the priestess of Isis, and I had the perfect person, Celestine Starr. She's one of her priestesses, and she came and she opened the portal and helped to invoke the energy. And then she needed someone to do the sacred masculine. So I had a couple, Diana and Michael Melchizedek, and they came and they ended up doing a phenomenal blessing of the men who were devoting their lives to bringing in the energy and raising the Divine Feminine, bringing in the quality of support and protection and love. And then Ilona Marshall, who's been a high priestess working in many of my ceremonies, she came. So that was really fun to have her there as well. So we had a glorious, glorious time, and were able to offer this. But in the day of the event, there was so much energy and so many people. And of course, I shared these stories and visions that I'm going to outline in this webinar, but I wasn't able to really explain to people why I was sharing these stories or what the backstory was behind the stories, or kind of help them to understand a little deeper, because I was one in a series of presenters, and there wasn't a lot of time to go into much depth. So I thought I would put this webinar together so that people could understand a little more detail about why I picked the stories that I picked to share. And the first thing comes from this whole notion or idea about the theme, which was the power of the call to gather, which is very significant and important for these times. And I love this wonderful painting from, I believe it's Kamara Bajra, who painted this beautiful Magdalene as a sovereign priestess, which is the new archetype that's emerging, according to Amanda Elohim, who's one of the priestess leaders who works in our area. And I think she's right on in the sense that there is this new sovereign, what the Gospel of Mary Magdalene talks, the whole anthropos, complete being, so fully present, fully empowered, missing and lacking nothing, knowing and completely assured of their oneness with God. So, and now the call is to gather these people and bring them together. So when I was ordained on 10-10-10 at the Temple of Isis in Geyserville by Elizabeth Kelly and Lady Olivier, I went into an altered state of bliss. I was so happy. And at the time that I was in this altered state, I was thinking to myself, is this because I'm all dressed up as a priestess and I'm so happy that's why I'm feeling this level of joy, or my inner kid is finally happy with what I'm doing and what's happening? And I went back to my room and I randomly opened A Course in Miracles, and my eye caught this sentence from the Course that said, all separation vanishes as holiness is shared. So the being our separated selves, even though we like being separate, we like our separate bank accounts, we like our separate car, we like our separate beds, separate stuff and all that kind of stuff. There is a certain pain that I personally have felt, and I know many others have felt, about feeling separate. So all separation vanishes as holiness is shared, for holiness is power. And, humanity has been in the business of seeking power for so long, but the power has been misdirected and misguided. So when we find holy power and we share it, for by sharing it, it gains in strength. And this is the power that nurtures. This is the power that uplifts, enlivens life, that gives the support, because it's the power of love. And so for holiness is power, and by sharing it, it gains in strength. And I realized I had never felt the strength of holy power. It is like the best feeling in the world. And I was completely blown away by it, and it caught me off guard. It was unexpected. So very shortly after that, I met Marguerite Riglioso, who was working on her PhD, and she had published this book of her dissertation work on the Virgin Mother, goddess of antiquity, and the cult of the divine birth phenomena in ancient Greek. And she was taking the academic scholarly point of view of looking at these ancient texts that describe these stories and coming to a much deeper through her own shamanic eyes. And at the time that I was meeting Marguerite, I was being told and given a vision that I was to create a ceremony to honor Mother Mary for her consciousness to conceive, light, and birth an avatar. And it was very interesting, because when I received the vision to do this, it came with everything that I needed to make it happen. It was like when I spoke about it, it resonated with people, it opened and awakened, and the people that I was led to, like Marguerite and some of the other women and men that participated with me, they all said yes, they could feel it. And I had remembered seeing these beautiful Renaissance paintings about the light coming into Mother Mary, the light of her conception. And so I was like, I wanted to know more, and I just was totally enthralled. So we put this all together, and 2 months later, there I was standing, honoring Mother Mary for her consciousness. Now that's really important to understand. It was for her consciousness to conceive, light, and birth it, and inform, which I would find out later what that would mean, an avatar. And so here's the whole team that showed up to participate in the ritual with me. Marguerite's in the center with the dark blue coat, and Elizabeth is to her left, and then Celestine and Alona, who came with me to the Thousand Goddess Conference. And at the very end of the line is Sophia, song healer, who sang. And then next to me, the man next to me is Donnie Regamuto, who is very significant sacred masculine, who really helped support me as I began to move forward and become more involved in my priestess world, because I realized this work about creating a sacred space for the energy of people to understand what holy power was and to feel was what is holy power was an important thing that was going to be my work moving forward in the world. So, and as a good priestess is, one of the things that we do when we have a goddess altar is we always have some kind of offering for the public. And so I was trying to think of what to do, and I thought, oh, okay, let's do daffodil bulbs, because this was in the winter. And so people could take them home and plant it. And then I became obsessed with trying to figure out, well, we should have a ceremony when the bulbs bloom. And when would that be? And I went on the internet and I started looking around, trying to figure out, how do we figure out when is the best time to do a ceremony? And there was no way, because when you plant it, how good the soil is, the amount of watering, the position of the light, all of that informs and makes a difference as to what would happen. So in the meantime, I just let it go. But then one morning they bloomed, and it just turned out miraculously that they bloomed on the day that I was on my way to a sacred ceremony that Jan was leading with the same group of people about opening the throat chakra, releasing the voice of the feminine divine. Because our voice has been cut off, our voice has been shut down. And a lot of it had to do with witch burning and the way the marginalization of women over the centuries. And so Jan, who's in the middle of this group, was the one who was leading us on that thing. And then A Course of Love came into my life, which I've become very involved with and now teach and lead seminars and workshops on, because to me this new channeled writing is so important. This particular quote from the Course says, "Rise and awaken to your resurrected self. There is no longer a Godhead to follow into paradise. Take not the example of any of these, and know instead the example of a woman, of Mary, Mother of God." So this book is informing us of a whole new relationship with Mother Mary. So in the Renaissance paintings, and I hold a sacred circle the second Tuesday of every month at Open Secret Bookstore in San Rafael, where we practice the ideas put forth by the Course of Love. But you see this painting on the left is Mother Mary being ascended and her assumption, they say, and Mary Magdalene on the right, both of whom became fully awake, fully realized masters from the work that they did following Jesus. And of course, Mary was the one, according to A Course of Love, that actually informed him how to become his Christed self. So the quote is, "Mary, like Jesus, fully realized fully Christ consciousness and full expression of Christ consciousness in form." So while she was here, her consciousness had come to the place where she would be able to conceive light, birth a God, and then inform him how to become the full expression of his Christed self. And I know there's no such word as Christed, but there ought to be, because it depicts what is the dynamic that's going on. The male provided the manifestation of the effect of the cause created by the female in the virgin birth. My mother, Mary, was responsible for the incarnation of Christ in me. And this is Jesus speaking. And of course, there are some wonderful paintings that show this relationship of how there was something that she literally held it in mind or in consciousness, in her heart, this work that she was supposed to be doing. So you are each called, the Course of Love goes on to say, to return to your virgin state, to a state unadulterated by separation, a state in which what is begotten through union with God. It is from this unalterated state that you are free to resurrect, as I resurrected. It is through the Blessed Virgin Mary's resurrection in form that a new pattern of life is revealed. So this is really fun, because basically what Jesus is saying is that it was my mother who brought the Christ consciousness onto this planet. And now we need to go back and look at what she did. So she was able to achieve what is called this virgin state of consciousness, a state of unadulterated by separation. So she was not feeling separate. So if a good metaphor to use is like if God is the ocean, and then there's a wave that brings forth an individualized extension or expression of the ocean, there is not any part of the wave, not even the last little drop at the tip of the wave, that is not connected to or part of the ocean. It's all part of the ocean. But each individuated wave, there's no waves or two waves are the same. You could have a wave that's like a big ass tsunami and just destroys things, and that's how people are in their lives. They wreak havoc on everything, and then you can have waves that just are little ripples on the shore, playing and having fun. So anyway, that would be kind of a way to help understand it. It's all connected to the ocean. So when we ourselves open up our minds, our consciousness, to be able to understand the truth of who we are, and that we are the unadulterated ground being, our innocence, in union with God. We have never not been in union with God. We are never separate from God. We are one with God. And it's just this crazy thing. As the Course in Miracles said, we had this tiny mad idea that we thought we would be separate from God, and we forgot to laugh. So it is from this unadulterated state that you are free to resurrect, as I resurrected. It is through the Blessed Virgin Mother's resurrection in form that this new pattern of life is revealed. So she is the living demonstration. And Mary Magdalene was also a living demonstration to show us how to do this. Well, one of the aspects is this concept or idea of gathering. That's why they titled this talk, The Power of Gathering. When two or more gathered, that creates union with God. Because we don't enter heaven or create heaven on earth by ourselves. It is something that we do together, because we are not separate. We are one. We are whole. So together reveals who you are. So we are revealing to each other just the truth of who we are. We are helping to wake each other up as different ones of us come into higher consciousness. So I always appreciate and thank and acknowledge Elizabeth Kelly for being a part of my journey in helping to awaken me. She was ordained in the Holy Order of Mary Magdalene, and only one woman a year is ordained in this order. It was a secret order passed down through the ages. And so Elizabeth had this really powerful experience of her ordination, and then she became her own Hierophant and started the Lyceum of Sophia, where she then ordained other women in her own Lyceum. So I was one of the women that she ordained. The other person that was instrumental in my awakening is Kathleen McGowan. And Kathleen McGowan has written many books about the Magdalene. She's had her own personal apparitional experience of the Magdalene, and so did Elizabeth as well. And Kathleen has now started the National Magdalene Movement, which I am going to attend she meets with groups of women from all over in resort areas. Like this year, we're meeting in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the first weekend of December. And if you can go to her website and you'll find out more about it. Anyway, and also if you go to Elizabeth Kelly's website, mmagdalene.org, you'll find out more about the Holy Order of Mary Magdalene and the Gnostic tradition that she is connected with and a part of. So anyway, I'm very grateful to these women because they helped me. So we awaken each other. The call to gather, join, sharing love, but it's calling to gather, join, and sharing love from a very high state of consciousness. Because there is this call, and everyone is called, but only few are actually able to open up and hear the call. And only a few actually choose to answer the call. And so one of the things that A Course in Love talks about is people who resonate with Mary. Now, ever since I've learned some of these new things about the awakening of who Magdalene is and who Mother Mary is and what powerful holy women they were, way, way beyond what the church had ever said. In other words, there is an aspect to them that makes them have a level of mastery that is beyond anything any of us have known. So here we're starting to see the artists are now beginning to paint these paintings that show them in their fully embodied resurrected state. So these women who feel this attraction and feel drawn in, then you might be called what the Course of Love says, a forerunner of Mary's. So you are someone who is devoted to the Divine Mother. And I had to flashback because when I was 6 months old, it was Christmas. And my mother was involved in the church that I grew up in as a child. And she was playing Mary. And they didn't have any baby boys in the community, in the church. But my mother had me. And so she presented me to the community as the Christ Sophia in 1949 to the community. And I didn't realize how much that would be connected to my destiny, to be working with helping to raise probably the most suppressed divine feminine, which is, to me, is the Sophia. The feminine face of God is way more suppressed. And if you want to find out more about that, you can go to my website. I have all kinds of webinars up there that you can learn more about that. But she is considered to be Sophia is the wisdom of God. And so because we live in a world of duality. And so at the level of duality, it's male and female, it's night and day, it's black and white. It's like there's all these different separated aspects. So the awakening of the Christ Sophia, the bringing forth of the feminine Christ, is a needed and necessary thing for us to understand, because I am the same life that any man is. The life of a man, the energy that creates life is the same energy that creates my life. We are equal like that. And so there I was presented in the nativity scene at my church in 1949 as the Christ Sophia, although they didn't say that name, but it is what happened because I was a child of the female variety. So those of you who are the forerunners of the way of Mary may have felt confusion over your sense of calling. And I want to point you out, your attraction to Mary makes you what is called a forerunner, especially if you're aware that you feel like you're drawing, you're pulled in. You want to somehow connect with her. The way of Mary is what the Course of Love says that we're now moving into. We're moving into an era that will help to establish who Mother Mary really was and what it was that she did at the level of mastery that she did it. That she was the one that was really responsible for bringing in, not only incarnating the Christ consciousness onto this planet, but informing this child that she had to become his Christed self. And so now as this time changes and we move into the era of the Way of Mary, many people may feel some confusion because this is like new information and we feel a strong pull and we feel it very much leaning in like I would love to follow her. I want to know more about her. But your confusion, you're not quite sure what exactly to do. So those of you who are forerunners of the Way of Mary, you know you are called to something and to something very important. There's a quickening in your being. There's an excitement. I was just completely floored when I read this in the Course of Love. And it clicked and bells and whistles all went off for me because I have so much felt like a forerunner of Mary. But I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to do other than extend my love and be available. So the Course of Love goes on to say, but it does not have a form within your mind, and so you see not how it can become manifest in the world. So this is what the Course of Love is doing, is giving us the information so that we can inform ourselves on how to make it manifest the Way of Mary, to make manifest the Way of Mary, which the Way of Mary is the way of being. It's how to be in this beautiful place of peace and love and joy, to being in our true nature, being the quality and aspect of the wisdom of God. So this course is but a trigger. These words, the prelude to the explosion. So what's happening is there's a shift or a change that's happening that's opening the world up to a new paradigm, which is creating the new earth. As Eckhart Tolle talks about, it is as if you've been waiting for someone to whisper, now! It's not really a whisper. The whisper has come. The time is now. And this is tremendous celebration. This is tremendous joy. For this is the way that we're going to get the quality as we're calling in the forerunners of Mary to gather. It is so important and so imperative that we find each other, that we begin to hook up. And it's because some of these ideas that we've been talking about, that as we gather, there are those among us, and this is what I told this particular group, there are those among you who already know how to step into and sustain a higher consciousness. You know how to be your higher self. You know how it is to express love, to extend compassion, to be the demonstration of peace as you walk amongst people who are suffering. You know how to reach out and send forth the healing energy. So many of these people are healers and people who have studied some of the ancient indigenous paths and ways. We had American Indians there. We had all kinds of healers and whatnot, people who really understood how to do this. And then, of course, we had Mari, who is the visionary, who called the gathering of the 1,000 goddesses. Now, she says there is a Tibetan prophecy that says that when 1,000 Taras, the green Taras who are the activists, come together peace will reign and compassion will reign the earth. And the Course of Love says, two or more gathered together reveals. What does it reveal? It reveals who you are. It reveals the truth of who you are. So when we're pulling in the highest thought, the highest conscious, and we have people who already know and understand how to show up as their higher self, and they reveal themselves as their higher self. In other words, they drop their ego, they release and let go of anything egoic in nature, and they are then revealing who they are. They're revealing their love. They're revealing their compassion. They're revealing their understanding of peace and love and joy. And so what ends up happening was she was talking about this incredible energy, a vortex of energy, for love gathered together is a celebration. So it was so intense when she was telling me about it. It was like, I was like, oh, sure, I want more energy and compassion. That sounds great. So we also wanted to take time to really understand and honor Dr. Martin Luther King. Talk about a master at gathering. This gathering that he was able to do was based on the 6 principles, and you can go to his website, Dr. King's website, and you'll find all 6 principles. These were the principles that Dr. King was implementing in his movement to create the transformation and the paradigm shift. And principle number 2 really struck me, because principle number 2 is the purpose of nonviolence is to create the beloved community. And that is totally what we're all about. When people are in their higher consciousness and their higher state, they're in a state of nonviolence because they're speaking compassionately and they're living from love, and they're extending themselves in love. And the love they extend actually produces the safety that they experience in the world. And they create a beloved community from that, because the purpose of gathering becomes to celebrate, to love, to dance, to sing, to have joy, and all of that, which is so important. So this is the power of gathering as our higher selves. And as we all hook up and share, Amari just tagged me. So as we all hook up and share, we stand in our truth, in our true nature. And so the next day, on Sunday, I led a workshop called Deepening into the Mary Mysteries. And this is an idea in this workshop that I talked about on Sunday, but I want to put it forth to you as part of the backstory with the Thousand Goddess Gathering. For we all have strife in our life, and we have the discord where we get into arguments and whatnot. So there is actually a goddess who is devoted to holding this energy. And part of the truth of our being human, fully human, is we have to understand that we have human qualities that cause us to struggle and have strife and to argue with people and have discord. Of course, now America is really suffering quite a bit from all of the separation and discord that we have amongst each other from our separated selves. So part of the way is just to acknowledge that it's the truth. And so we usually create shadow altars where we pay respect to the fact that we're human and that we're not perfect people. And we need to understand our human nature. For, as Marianne Williams said in her beautiful quote that was used by Nelson Mandela, it is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And it's very hard, especially for women, to not feel good enough or not feel God enough. to to really be in our holy power, to stand in our holy self and claim it and feel it and know it to be one, that we are one with God, is like the ego will come in and say, okay, that's quite enough of that holiness. So it's to pull off a gathering of 1,000 goddesses is no easy task. And part of it too is because the goddess culture is a culture that has been so suppressed and shut down, and we had witch burnings and all kinds of things that led for women to be really afraid to speak their truth or to even know their divine, even though we've had the divine masculine up here, the divine feminine has been like down here, barely a blip on the radar screen. And so this very meager attempt to bring the divine feminine up. And then, because people say, you know, really it's oneness is the truth, right? But you don't get to this until you actually allow the divine feminine to come up and join with this, and then you have oneness. Then you have the whole package, the whole enchilada, as they say, and then you can join in one. So we don't disenfranchise anything. We just understand that there are these fragments, there are these cells, and we're calling them all together, calling them in. And then those people who have the capacity and the wherewithal to stand in their holy nature will do so. So in my journey to begin to do my holy work and to implement creating these sacred space where people could feel their holy power, I always start by honoring the Black Madonna, because the Dark Mother is, I mean, my friend China Gallen wrote a wonderful book called Longing for Darkness. And it's so true. We need the Earth Mama energy. We need the Dark Mother energy. You know, and so in my mystical journey, I've had many mystical and magical experiences. And this kind of helps you to understand that there's more going on than meets the eye. I've been attending Unity in Marin, and the time that I was attending Unity in Marin, the senior minister was Bill Englehart. And Bill had a dream that the Black Madonna came to him, and she said, Bill, I want the rudder. Now the rudder is the rudder of the boat, and there's a picture of the boat here with the rudder right here. And so she's saying, let's see if I can get this little pen thing to work. Oops. I want that. I want laser pointer. This thing. So anyway, she's saying to Bill, I want the rudder. And he's like, no, you can't have the rudder. Now, Bill is not only the senior minister steering the ship of Unity in Marin, he was also at the time president of the board of Worldwide Unity. So he was overseeing unity throughout the world and what was happening and decisions that were being made, and Unity Village in Kansas City and all the stuff that was going on there. He was very intricately involved in it as president of the board. And so she's in the dream says to him, Bill, you need to give me the rudder. He's like, no, you can't have the rudder. And she's like, she's not going to argue with him. She's like, holds out her hands and she looks at him and she goes, Bill, the rudder. And he releases the rudder to her and he wakes up and he goes, oh my God. He goes, that was so intense. I wonder what that was about. Well, he decided to call me or to try to talk to me about it because he knew I knew about the Black Madonna. So I said, okay. So I saw him a few days later and he says, what do you think the dream meant? And I said, well, she wants in. You know, it's time for the Madonna in her full glory. She came to the south of France by rudderless boat. And now she wants the rudder. Because, you know, the story is that Magdalene came with an Egyptian slave child named Sarah. And some say this was Magdalene's daughter. And they came by rudderless boat when they left with Joseph of Arimathea. And Mary Solomon, a few other women as well, they came to the south of France, where when you go to the south of France, you'll see all these chapels and cathedrals devoted to either Sarah or Magdalene or to Mother Mary, because they really honor the divine feminine. And there's evidence that she had been preaching throughout and teaching throughout the south of France. So, and the Gypsies have also adopted Sarah as, you know, because the legend is that she walked on water to bring the boat in. And this is the spot where she is thought to have come in from, and there's a chapel right there where she is located in the crypt, landing in Les Saint Maria del Mar in the south of France. So, and this is the child which the Gypsies call Saint Sarah. So, and to me, it's like we have so many fragmented aspects to ourselves. We wrap it all in and include it. So one of the things that happened was Elizabeth Gibbons, who's right here in the center, had painted this beautiful painting of the Black Madonna. And I had seen Elizabeth at Grace Cathedral giving a Magdalene workshop, and she had brought one of her Magdalene paintings. And I was going to be doing my first ceremony at Unity in Marin, and I wanted to do an honoring of the Black Madonna because of after Bill told me about this dream, suddenly the doors opened and I was able to do these ceremonies at Unity in Marin. And so I talked to Elizabeth, and she said,
"Here's what I found on the web for the."
Sorry. I talked to Elizabeth, and I said, you know, is it possible that you could bring one of your Black Madonna paintings, like this one in particular would be great, to Unity in Marin for our ceremony? And she goes, oh no, she goes, I don't think so. She said, that's like Friday night. You say, you know, the traffic out of San Francisco on Friday night, that's like commuter rush hour traffic. It's terrible. And I have to be there by 7. And she said, and this thing is so heavy, it takes 2 people to carry it. So then she'd have to rope her husband into helping her. And it's like, oh my God. She goes, not likely, but let me think about it, she says. Well, the next day she goes to the Crystal Fair, and she happens to meet this angel, Michelle Newman. And these two did not know each other at all before. And Michelle was giving readings at the Crystal Fair. And Elizabeth is an artist, and she gets a lot of her supplies because she works a lot. As you can see in her artwork, she works with crystals. And so she goes and picks up her supplies there and sees what's available. And she walked by Michelle, and she felt this strange pull, like she was supposed to sit down and have a reading with her. And it was so strong and intense that she decided she needed to honor it, even though she never gets readings and she doesn't do that kind of thing. So she sat down, and Michelle says to her, what would you like a reading about? And she goes, I don't know. I wasn't planning to have a reading. So she says, how about, let's see, how do I get my artwork out in the world? And so Michelle closes her eyes, and very quickly she goes, oh my God. She goes, I'm getting a really clear, direct message. You're supposed to take your Black Madonna painting to Unity in Marin on Friday night and help this woman named Christy Michaels. And Elizabeth about fell off her chair. So when she called me the next day, I was totally expecting a no. And I was totally like, oh, I was so apologetic. I didn't want her to feel bad. So sorry she went through that whole thing. And she said, no, she said, I am bringing my painting, but let me tell you why. So that was really a phenomenal experience that we had, but it just kind of showed you, because she had no idea that, and then later we all got together at the San Francisco Opera, did an opera called The Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And so we all met there and got a chance to meet each other. But that was such an amazing story. And this is the ceremony where we had this beautiful ceremony set up. So Celestine is in front of the altar to the Divine Mother. And this, we have, starting with the Black Madonna, every expression of the Madonna, the Magdalene, in all of the different cultures and in all of the different ways that she comes forward. We bring forth this expression of her, which I think is really important to understand how prevalent she is and how much she's rising too. So thank you, Celestine, for your, and Celestine came with me to Washington, D.C. So what are we being called to do? It says in the Course of Love that we know, we understand, we feel this pull, we understand we're being called, and we feel that somehow it's important, but we don't exactly know or understand what it is that we are to do. And so what the Course of Love is that we're going to be becoming our spacious selves. So what does it mean to practice informing and being informed? It means to join together with others who have the ability to maintain Christ consciousness in your company. So there I was before all these people at the Thousand Goddess Conference gathering, and I knew that there were people there who had the ability to maintain their higher self consciousness in my presence and could join with me to do that. So when we practice informing and being informed means we're open to the dimension of our higher selves. This creates the joining together of spacious selves. And I love this concept. Don't you want to feel spacious? I mean, one aspect about being our separated selves is a negative aspect, but the other aspect of it is to feel more spacious is a delightful concept. It is joining without boundaries, that we could just expand and extend ourselves. We're pushing out love from our hearts, and we're sharing this love, and we have auras that are full and big and filled up with cups that are full to overflowing. So we're not in fear. We have soft edges that develop, and those soft edges actually will bump up against the other people because we're becoming clear pools. Clear pools meaning that we can be authentic. We can be truly who we are, and we don't have to pretend to be something that we're not. You become clear pools flowing into each other. You make your spirits known. So we begin to develop this awareness and understanding of our spirit nature and becoming our higher selves. For when we're connected and we have this really incredible conscious contact with our higher self, and we are allowing ourselves to step in and claim, we are here, we are here, we are here, bringing all the way in our higher selves, then our guidance is from the heart. Our guidance isn't up in our head telling us what to do and where we should go. Our guidance is from our heart. And from our heart, we share and extend our love. And then we are told, as our spacious selves, sustaining this level, these soft edges that bump up, the way in which we gather raises the field. There's no, the spacious self knows no obstacle, for it knows no uncaring. So then as we join together, we're joining together in compassion, in love, in caring, and to be with other people who are holding this vibration that knows no uncaring, then we all care. We all have this compassion. We all have this ability to love. And there's a greater generosity that shows up. There's a greater energy of peace and love that comes forth in people. And that's what we've all been looking for. For we all want this power. But we have an ego that's like, no, back off. No, I want my space. Give me my space. But that's like from an ego point of view, rather than I can be here as my authentic self. I can be aligned. I can be pushing out love. And I create my own safety from being in my spacious self, so that I'm guided from my heart as to where to go and what to do. So one of the important facts about that is that the scent of the rose, which is connected to Mother Mary and also with Magdalene as well, the smell of the rose, when we smell a really beautiful rose from a garden with a master gardener who's tilled the soil and given it lots of love, it opens the heart and it helps to remove our resistance to raising to our higher selves. And now if you go into any major corporate store, like a grocery store in a chain, and try to buy roses, all the roses that are being marketed commercially, all the scent has been removed from those roses. And it's almost literally as if it's by design, maybe not consciously, but the fear of, oh, you can't smell this, you can't smell that, it's gonna hurt you in some way. And so we'll just remove all scent, because the flower might not sell as well if somebody's afraid of scent. But the scent of the rose is the one that helps to remove our resistance to moving into our higher self. So it's a very important scent. So we had the rose scent there. The other thing is the work with the sacred masculine, because what the sacred masculine's journey is right now is the transformation of the sword, which was used for domination and control over things, to the sword of light that cuts through the veil of illusion and brings forth a greater truth. And that sword is held by the feminine. So Michael and Diana, who you see here, Michael stands with his wife, Diana Melchizedek. And these are in our sacred ceremony. They are knighting Patrick McCullen, who works with Jane Goodall and is a peace advocate. And so they're knighting him with the energy of Sophia. And so Michael has released and turned over the sword to his wife, and then he stands in loving support, looking very much like a Joseph, as she raises it up and connects with Sophia, and she brings that energy down. And if you go to my website, you'll see the full video of it. It's extraordinary. And you have Nicola Amadora, who's one of the priestesses who leads Magdalene pilgrimages, and Denise Relis, who is one of our musicians who works in our sacred ceremonies. Denise is playing the peace violin, which the Sophia, the mother of God, the feminine face of God, instructed Patrick McCullen to make. And all of the pieces of wood that are being made here that make up this peace violin have come from various ceremonies that Patrick has been involved in to bring forth peace. And when he was not a musician and he didn't know how to make a violin, and when he talked to a friend of his who was a master violin player, and he said, what do you think about these woods? He said, oh my God, this is going to make a horrible violin. It's going to sound awful. And, but he went ahead and he made it to the best of his ability, following the instructions of the Divine Mother. And he was invited to attend a really big event on the Ganges River, the Kumbh, where he was to do one of the opening invocations prayers, because Patrick is considered a saint in India. And he put the violin, as he was being instructed, into the mud of the Ganges River. And he said, okay. He said he got the direction. And so he brought it back out. And as he brings it back out, he realized that it was all muddy. It took 3 months to dry out. And now it plays beautifully. Extraordinary. In fact, it's considered by the Smithsonian to be one of the top 100 violins in the world. And they have asked him to, for him to donate it when he goes to, when he passes away, that the Smithsonian wants his violin. So, Mary Magdalene, the woman who knew the all, the woman who achieved a state of enlightenment, who knew about becoming her higher self. And she has now been able to be the living demonstration. So as we were speaking to these people that had gathered for the 1,000 goddesses, we lit the incense of the rose, and we walked through the audience, sharing and extending our love as people opened their hearts and began to let go of the resistance to moving into their higher selves. And what that does is it creates a field. And Celestine had come in before and opened a portal so that the energy could come in. And as I was talking, I swear to God, there was so much energy coming through. I almost couldn't stand. It was like so intense. I had never felt anything quite like that in my life. And Mari said that they had electromagnetically tested the field before. It was like around 200 megahertz or something. It was like 1200. It was like off the charts after the ceremony. So it was quite a wonderful and big energy. But boy, I tell you, I was quite taken back by it. And one of the things I shared with people, because now we had all of these people who were willing to stand in their higher self, willing to bring their energy, how this relates to the teachings that are outlined in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And I have several webinars on my website. You can go to see the Gospel of Mary Magdalene.info and to learn more. But her famous line from that is, "This is why I tell you, be in harmony." Now, be in harmony is really, really important, because it's not just, this is a good idea, or but maybe you should consider this. It's like a declaration, be in harmony. But how do you do that? Because we're not living in harmonious times. So she gives really clear demonstration and ideas about how to manifest that. You're breathing and noticing any disharmony and feeling any sadness or anger. Or for me, I often get feeling very numb because I'm not in touch with my feelings. And to heal this and shift to a higher thought in our collective mind becomes really important. So the first thought after we do that is, and get this to work, that we take inspiration from the manifestations of our true nature. So when you see beauty, the manifestation of beauty, when you see or have an experience of peace and the manifestation of peace, when you remember a time when you felt loved and cared for. Kindness, gentleness, compassion, any of these aspects of God, aspects of spirit, these are your true nature. So what you need to do is you take the inspiration from the manifestation of your true nature. You remember a time when you were happy. You remember, and even if some people, I know, so far I haven't met anyone who says, well, I've never had a happy moment or I've never felt love. But even if that were possible, if you were to imagine what that would be like, to take a breath in and allow yourself to just be in the memory. So when we are changing to our true nature, and this is, of course, the alchemy work that Magdalene did, and she was able to understand this, that you take inspiration from the manifestation of your true nature. So when I remember a time that I felt really loved, or that I was really happy, it's inspiring. It brings me joy just to think about it. And then what I notice is that then there I am, I'm in that moment. So to be in harmony with our enemies, because we're supposed to love our enemies, right? This is really tough, is to skillfully allow the violence, the energetic violence from their way of thinking to pass through us without contaminating us. So we just let it go. Because what we do, as Eckhart Tolle so beautifully says, and he has so many wonderful YouTube videos on dealing with difficult personalities, is we just go into a place of neutrality. We go into a place because the energy is just energy. It's energy of life. And then you create the tsunami, if it's a tsunami of energy, or if it's just a gentle ripple that's playing at the feet of children. That's your choice. But when you go into the place of neutrality and you go into a heart of peace, and sometimes you literally have to touch your heart to activate yourself so that you can switch into, we have two nervous systems, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And one triggers fight or flight, but the other one triggers a sense of well-being and peace. And so this is what we want to do. She's asking us to come into our hearts, to be the sacred holy ones, to understand that we are blessed, to be in a neutral, compassionate, vertical. So we have our conscious contact. We are making that journey from our head to our heart. We become the full embodiment of ourself. And then from that place, we walk forth in love, for love is all there is. And this is the good news. This is the real gospel. The gospel means the good news. But being such a devotee of the divine feminine and whatnot, personally for myself, I had some issues around all the male language, especially in A Course in Miracles, which I found, and I will be doing some more webinars and talks on this, mirrors the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And there are passages that in both the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary that show up in the Course in Miracles, literally almost word for word. So in the Gospel of Mary, on page 8, contains a code and has some very strong male language, where she says, "For it is within you the Son of Man dwells. Go to him, and for those who seek him and find him." And I'm going, him? I've been reading and studying the Gospel of Mary Magdalene up to this page. It's made a very clear demonstration that Jesus considers Mary Magdalene to be an equal. He also understands that she is the one who really understood his teaching, and her practice and dedication to his teaching allowed herself to become what they call the woman who knows the all. So she was able to get it at a level that allowed her to have an ascension resurrection experience at the end of her life. So we know that spirit doesn't mean the man of Jesus. Is clear that he's talking about humankind or mankind. So what is with the him? But there's so much male language that's throughout the Course in Miracles. It just makes it really hard. So in a morning meditation, I was sitting there and I asked in prayer, what do I tell my Divine Feminine group that I was going to be teaching the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, that we were going to be talking about this page 8, which has all these, and those who seek him and find him, and then you will know the kingdom of God. And I was like, what do I tell them about all the hymns that are there? And I just kind of let it go, and I was sitting there quietly in my morning meditation. And all of a sudden I heard him, you tell them it's H period, I period, M period. And I went, what? H period, I period, N period, what is that? H equals heaven, I equals N, M equals me. It's heaven in me. That's what him is. Heaven in me. That was so brilliant and so wonderful to receive that message from Jesus about that heaven. He's talking about heaven in me. And that is so true, right? And of course, the very next sentence that comes up is walk forth. So you see, when we go vertical and we connect with heaven in me, in my heart, and then we walk forth in that place of heaven in me, as we walk forth in that place, that's when we're able to know the kingdom of God. That's when we're able to know safety, love, peace, happiness, joy. So in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, it says that she, after telling them of her vision, Mary arose. And the Anastasia in Greek that is used for rising again actually has a definition of resurrection. So it was her first, she's telling her vision to the disciples after the crucifixion in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And she's telling them that I had this understanding. And she embraced them all, and she began to speak to her brothers that he is calling on us to become fully human. And thus Mary turned their hearts toward the good. So becoming a heart-centered, universal human being in what the Course of Love talks about, a wholehearted state. This is what is really fantastic. So then as we go out and face the world and are a part of what is in the world, they all went out to spread the gospel. But in the Gospel of Mary, it says they all went out to spread the gospel according to Mary. The beautiful anthropos, whole, complete. And so now we have in our world the Course of Love coming back to us, helping us to understand how to create and connect into a wholehearted way. So when we place our hand on your heart, it activates the heart as a brain to guide you. In fact, they even say now scientifically, they found out that there are more neuron receptor sites in the heart that act very similar to the ones in the brain to guide you. But when you're having your conscious contact, you're in the neutral place, and now your guidance is going to get you somewhere. It's going to get you into the beautiful state of love. And that's how we create heaven on earth. That's how we're going to create the new ones. And so this first step that the Course of Love is saying, that the thousand goddess gathering, is that we must gather. We must come forth, the group of us. We come forth as our higher selves. Those of us who have the ability, who've done the work, who've been able to sustain our Christed higher consciousness, whatever you are, our Buddha nature, anything. What can one small group do? when we gather, we create a field and we raise the frequency. We raise the energy for everyone, and we help to create a pink wave that helps to bring forth the compassion, the love, the caring in an uncaring world, in a separated world, a separated self. So I went on to share this other story, which I think was so important. I saw this in a documentary, 2 different documentaries, because we have a country that's talking about we need to build a wall. But I want to tell you the story about how the Berlin Wall came down, because the Berlin Wall, even though I think it was only like 35 miles long, it was quite insane because so many people lost their lives trying to get over the wall. But there was a woman who did work with a group called Children of Peace. And she had a quilt made with the names of all the children who had been killed at the hand of war. And she was trying to bring attention to the fact that children are often victims of war. And we're seeing that now in Yemen with, 13 million people and children dying of starvation and whatnot. So she took these kids and she went all over the world. One of the places she went was the Great Wall of China. And she would unravel the quilt with the kids, and it would get all this media attention. And then she would give her message of peace. And then she would light this candle. And she would light this candle to be able to symbolize the light of peace and the light of God. So we lit a candle at this gathering as well, because later when the wall came down, they decided that they were going to hold a ceremony for all the peace workers, and each person was going to get a little piece of the wall right where the very first crack happened. And so when she was contacted and invited to come to the ceremony, she was very curious because she had been to the Berlin Wall. She had opened up her quilt. She had put the candle there. And so she was really quite looking forward to this particular thing because the wall had now come down. So what she was surprised about was that when she arrived at the site where the first crack in the wall happened, it was exactly where she put her candle. So that was pretty amazing to her. The award ceremony was right where her candle was placed. So this small act of high intention consciousness done by a small number of people, this was her and her kids were doing this, bringing this peace, caused a wall to come down. What was really interesting was the story about how the Berlin Wall from the other side, inside Berlin, was they were saying that there was a group that began to gather, and they gathered and they held the idea of freedom in mind. They were just meditating on the word freedom. That's all they were doing, was sitting and meditating, contemplating the concept of freedom. And the authorities came and saw that they were gathering, that more and more people were coming to join them. And the authorities were getting a little nervous, and they came over there and they said, why are you guys meeting? What is going on here? And they said, we're just sitting here meditating. They blew meditation, nothing. It doesn't, they're atheists. They don't think that it has anything to do with anything, right? So they just dismissed it. But the intensity of the gathering began to build. And at the same time, there was a news story that broke at the 6 o'clock news with the Minister of Interior, where somebody was interviewing him. And they were saying, because they were getting more and more pressure to at least have some way that some people could go back and forth, just for this, I mean, the insanity of nobody being able to go back and forth. There had to be some opening or some way. And so he said they were actually considering some form of voucher. So for commercial interests and things like that, that there could be a way that people could go through. Well, within this group that was gathering, and more people, and the group got bigger and stronger, somebody brought the story in the form of a rumor that they are going to give us vouchers. And everybody went, what? They're going to give us vouchers to be able to go on the other side. They all immediately got up and they went to the gate. And as they're marching to the gate, more and more people join them. Pretty soon there's 100,000 people at the gate. And the guard who's at the gate, who they interviewed him later in this documentary, he was like saying, I spent 30 years of my life guarding this gate. And suddenly when all these people descended on me saying, no, they said they're going to that you guys are going to issue vouchers, that we're going to be able, so we're going to be here because we want to get our voucher to go to the other side. And he says, I don't know anything about any voucher. There's nothing's been said about any vouchers. I don't know anything about any vouchers. And the more people came and the more pressure was like, no, they're giving us vouchers. We're getting the vouchers. And they started pushing on him. And suddenly he just let go. And he just let it open. He said, I just couldn't take it anymore. And he goes, I can't believe I spent 30 years of my life guarding this wall. What a waste. So I can't believe we're thinking of making a wall. So I had Celestine Starr, who was representing and invoking her, place the candle in front of the goddess statue to signify this intention of ours to have a world living in compassion, to manifest the 1,000 Tower gathering, the intention in which when Pope Francis finally, I think it was in 2016, the feast day of Mary Magdalene on July 22nd, acknowledged that she is the apostle to the apostle, and he elevated and restored her status to the apostle to the apostle. So we were really really happy for that, because what that did was it helped to raise the consciousness on the planet, and it shifted things. So our consciousness is now becoming light as a feather, which is really interesting, because when they found the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, one of the papyrus books was literally wrapped in feathers. And it takes the equality of the male and female, the holy encounter, the holy instant, the divine recognition of the life that I am and the life that you are. We are one in that life. There is no separation, and she is the goddess in the Bible. She is the one, Magdalene. For those who have ears, let them hear. The journey to awaken requires equality. We can't wake up, not one of us, not any of us, until we are accepting and understand the equality of all life. All life is valuable. All life is worthy and deserving. So we call you to rise up, sacred holy ones. We're calling forth on the forerunners of Mary. And there's an evolution that's beginning to happen from, oh, hear Israel, to having the eyes to see being able to vision and to know the truth of who we are through our vision, or what we call our third eye. And this is one of the teachings that comes out of the wrong direction, comes out of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Peter says to Mary in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, "Sister, we know that the teacher loved you differently from other women. Tell us whatever you learned of any words he told you, which we have not yet heard." And it sounds like he's open to hearing what Mary has to say, but not so fast. She says, "I will now speak to you of that which has not been given to you to hear. I had a vision." And then she goes into talking about what her vision is. And the Course in Miracles really helps to fill in the missing pieces to understand what they're talking about. You know, I have a master's degree in psychology. That my thesis was done on comparative religions and the influence of religion on modern Western transformative thought, especially the Eastern impact of Eastern religions. And so in studying the Course in Miracles, what I've learned is that our body's eyes can see only the past. It sees separation when we look out. To know our oneness, we have to have a vision from our divine mind, or gnosis. So we have to look within. So when you look at how we see with the eyes, what happens is light comes into the eyeball and it hits the back of the eye where the optic nerves are. And there is a signal that is created that generates going to the brain. And it is those signal impulses that are going up to figure out, what does this mean that I'm looking at? So, whereas with visioning, it is with the vision of the nose, of the divine mind, that we overcome the without within. So, let me see. This is the George Latour painting, which I discovered. This is a series of 3 paintings. And there's a whole nother webinar detailing on that. But basically, the meditation and the work that Magdalene did, she was able to come into her experience of the light within as herself. And when she did this, it changed everything. So the candle in the next painting becomes solid because she's accomplished as within and without as being one and the same. She basically had her own resurrection. Her ability to vision is what really set her apart, not whether she had sex with Jesus or not. They might have, and they might have had children. Many people say that, and I'm not here to say yay or nay on that at all. But I think what gets overlooked is her resurrection. And she knew she was one with God. Her death was no death at all. For there is no death, and she knew that. So she had an ascension experience. So as Marianne Williamson says in her book, Return to Love, and this quote was used in Nelson Mandela's inaugural speech, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And so as we see the rise of the goddess, the Green Tara, the Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion, coming back in, we begin to understand that we are all the holy ones. And our destiny is to know the truth of our being. And no matter what culture we come from, what era we come from, we are all the holy ones. And Magdalene, as an equally awakened partner is our modeling, just like Mother Mary being the master of the ability to inform the Christ, to become the Christ. So she informed her son. And then here we all are with Connie and the Melchizedeks, Michael and Diana, and on the ley line. And by the way, I didn't know or realize before that the Washington Monument is actually sitting on a Vesca Pisces, which is the ancient sacred geometry for the feminine, the womb of the Magdalene. It's actually considered to be part of the Magdalene, which is for a whole nother lecture. So anyway, let's see. So we go forth and spread the gospel of Mary Magdalene. And blessed be. And if you want more information, you're welcome to come to my website, gospelofmarymagdalene.info, and get more information about the work I'm doing, the sacred ceremonies I'm offering, the teachings I have that come from my own mystical experiences of awakening to both Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. She comes in many forms, many archetypes. Which one do you resonate? Are you a forerunner of Mary? Blessed be. Blessed be. Thank you.